Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. My name is Simon Kenton-Lake. I am from Nourish Scotland. I'm a Senior Policy Officer there, and I'll be guiding us through today's event. We've actually got 200 people registered for the event today, which is amazing. We've got representatives for all 32 local authorities. We've got Scottish Government, COSLA, Food and Drink Federation, Scotland Food and Drink, etc. Quite a lot of the national bodies represented, which is fantastic. But also we've got universities, researchers, and people from across the UK. So whilst this is an event specifically aimed at Scotland and it's specifically aimed at local authorities, we acknowledge there's lots of other people here, and I just want to say thank you as well to the local health boards that are also joining us. So just to be aware of that. So when we're having discussions, if some of the topics do feel they're a little bit kind of Scotland specific, well, welcome, that's what you come into. So I'd also like to just say a little bit about the event today while we're waiting for the people to come in. It's a joint event with Scotland Excel, Assist FM and Sustainable Food Places Network. So Scotland Excel and Sustainable Food Places and Assist, you may be aware of all these three organisations, but if you're not aware of Sustainable Food Places, then just to give you a little bit of information about us, we're a network of food partnerships working across the UK. And when we talk about a food partnership, we're talking about partnerships of actors across the food system working together in collaboration in order to improve our regional and local food systems. So in Scotland, we are working with 16 local authorities already, and we have conversations with another 5 or 6 already as we're going on now. Now, one of the things about Sustainable Food Places Network is that we work at this systems level, and in order to be a member of the network, you must have the proactive involvement of your local authority. So this is quite an interesting time for food partnerships with the new Good Food Nation Act that's come through and the need for national and local food action plans. And we think that food partnerships are a very effective mechanism of delivering on this. So if anybody would like any more information about Sustainable Food Places or how to look at a food partnership in your local area, then my information will be in the chat. Okay, so what I'm going to do is going to share a slide for you now, which is the agenda for today. Okay, so as you'll see there, we were actually hoping to have Jane from Assist FM speaking to us today, but she was not able to join us, which is really unfortunate. So I'm not going to be able to really speak with the eloquency that Jane would have done, but I think it's worth saying a few words to set the scene before we start, because public procurement in Scotland is at a crossroads. We've got rising food prices, and at the same time there's the mounting threat of very real and deep budget cuts to local authorities. And most of these are going to be felt by those budgets that aren't ring-fenced, so for example, school food. We've also got an issue with supply, and recent Scottish Government figures showed a marked reduction in sourcing from Scottish and Scotland produce since COVID. Now, all these things, of course, have got a knock-on effect on some of our most progressive policies, such as the rollout of universal free school meals, because in the end, there's only so far you can spread the jam. Alongside, we're in the midst of a cost of living crisis, which is just at the time when the provision of at least one healthy, nutritious and tasty meal to children in school every day should be right at the very heart of our response to the crisis. We're also about to have a huge shake-up with a highly ambitious plan for a new healthcare service, and that's going to come in by 2016, the end of this Parliament. And this is going to cause great change, but of course with great change comes great opportunity. And we need to be thinking now about what we want to see on the future plates of those in our care. And remember, these are plates that many of us in the room might also be eating off. We also have other policy change coming down the line, which is the potential for Scotland to lead the way in how we do food in the UK. The new Good Food Nation Act has the power to truly transform the way we do food in Scotland, And this promises to take an integrated systems approach to food, and public procurement is one of its cornerstones. Equally, the results of the recent Local Food for Everyone consultation clearly pointed to the role of public procurement in developing the local food economy. And we know that this money isn't lost. Money spent locally not only stays local, but it's multiplied. The forthcoming Community Wealth Building Bill will build on this to ensure that well-being increases in communities and that wealth stays also within these communities. And furthermore, the forthcoming transition away from the Common Agricultural Policy could also help to ensure that we grow more of what we eat and eat more of what we grow in Scotland, but also in a way that supports our communities and our environment, meaning more good Scottish food on Scotland's plates, whether in a school, a prison, a hospital or a care home. So we're talking the right talk, but food procurement and indeed so many of our core values in Scotland are at a crossroads. So the question is, which road will we take? So this event aims to build and look on the progressive food procurement that's already happening in Scotland. And we want to see, what does this look like and how can we actually build upon it and work together going forward? So I'm going to pass over now. So as we know, Scotland Excel plays a key role in how local authorities procure food. And so I'd like to invite our first speaker, Laura Muir, to talk about Scotland Excel and the future role of local food within their frameworks. Over to you, Laura.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Just give me 2 wee seconds to get this sharing on the screen. There we go. So as a lot of you will hopefully know, my name's Laura Muir and I'm one of the category managers at Scotland Excel, looking after the corporate and education team and our operational supplies and services as well. But I was also our previous contract owner on our food frameworks, and they're still very much, much to probably James's disappointment, my baby, and very close to my heart. So I'll just make sure these slides are moving, sorry. So who is Scotland Excel? So we are the Centre of Procurement Expertise for the local government sector in Scotland. We're a leading non-profit shared service and we're funded by Scotland's 32 local authorities. Scotland Excel is governed by a joint committee of elected members from all local authority partners, and they're responsible for the strategic direction of our organisation as well as approving our annual budgets and business plans. A subgroup of this body, the Executive Subcommittee, meet regularly to approve our contract awards and other key business decisions. Our services are designed to help our councils meet the twin challenges of reducing budgets at a time of growing demand. Collaborative procurement increases efficiency and ensures that money is saved to protect frontline services. And by working together through Scotland Excel, our councils can realise a whole host of social, economic and environmental benefits with their spend. So we've got currently around about a £2 billion contract portfolio which supports the delivery of social care, construction, roads, transport, environment, corporate education and ICT services, and achieves annual savings of circa £14.4 million. This strategic approach ensures that our contracts are designed to encourage innovation, facilitate policy, support local economies and generate social value for our communities. So over the last 14 years or so, Scotland Excel has led the way in public food procurement. We've been looking to push our food portfolio to deliver value, quality produce for our councils, whilst also creating wider benefits for Scotland's economy. Our food contracts, which now include milk, meats, frozen foods, bread and rolls, fruit and vegetables and groceries, are now worth a collective £82 million per annum. They help to supply the products served in our schools, nurseries, care homes and community centres across the country. We work really closely with our suppliers and our local councils to ensure that our frameworks meet the requirements of all relevant legislation, particularly the nutritional requirements for food and drink in schools, Scotland Regulations 2020, and setting the table the nutritional guidance and food standards for early year childcare providers in Scotland 2018. So locally sourced produce has become an increasing priority for our councils over recent years, and we've really had to step up our role to make sure that public sector food contracts are more accessible to Scottish businesses. This also underpins the Scottish Government's drive to make sure that the power of public spending is used to boost Scotland's economy. This became even more important in the past couple of years or so, with local supply being really vital for our councils to be able to provide food to their most vulnerable residents during the various lockdowns. So we were keen to support the government's dairy action plan, which it was around including more Scottish produce in our groceries contract for yoghurt, butter, cheese and margarine. So to do this, we included a secondary price list within the tender so that suppliers could offer both a kind of potentially more cost-friendly option, but also a Scottish dairy products. And then that gave the councils the choice of which option they wanted to go to. As a result of this, Scottish dairy products are now available for our councils to buy through the framework. And by switching their product to a Scottish product for cheese, local authorities generated more than £4.2 million of business for the Scottish cheese sector through the previous generation of our groceries framework, and already more than £1 million on the current framework. To bring more Scottish produce onto our meats framework while still being in line with the procurement regulations, we were able to ask for Scottish beef and Scottish lamb by including protected geographical indication within our tender. And as a result of this, last year, more than 75% of the produce purchased through our meats framework was sourced from Scotland. When developing our frozen food frameworks, we gave the suppliers the opportunity to bid on a supply-only basis so that we could create opportunities for smaller manufacturers that potentially didn't have the national logistics in place to be delivering to schools up and down the country. As a result of this, an Aberdeenshire-based fish supplier secured a place in our contract to supply Scottish haddock, and that resulted in over £3.8 million of business on the previous generation of the framework for this small family-owned company. And it's been so successful, we've followed that approach on our groceries and provisions framework, which led to the appointment of 5 SME manufacturers in the framework. As well as looking at sourcing for local or Scottish products where we can, Scotland Excel also works with our suppliers to bring more Scottish SMEs onto our frameworks where we can. For all of our frameworks, we split it into different local authority areas whereby a supplier can bid for one, any or all 32 local authority regions without being penalised. And in some cases, particularly on our fresh foods frameworks, we'll split that geographical law into further sublots if we know that there's maybe local suppliers that could only bid for certain parts of an area. So that resulted in our last milk framework having 56 geographical lots. Across the food portfolio, our spending on Scottish produce continues to rise, and over the past 6 years it's increased year on year and now accounts for more than 37% of all the spend through our frameworks. Not only is this approach good for Scottish business, but it's also helping to create a greener Scotland by reducing our food miles. So yeah, as the food portfolio continues to evolve, we're going to keep engaging with Scottish food producers and manufacturers, whilst hopefully continue to support your delivery of healthy and nutritious school meals through our frameworks. We continue to work with a number of key stakeholders across Scotland, including the Soil Association, Scotland Food and Drink, Quality Meats Scotland, APSI and Assist FM. So that's kind of setting the scene just on our frameworks. And just while I've got the floor just now, I just wanted to talk a wee bit about a project that myself, Jane and Simon have been working on. So many of you might have heard of DP UK, which is supporting the implementation of dynamic food procurement in every region across the UK. Their aim is to support the formation of UK regional food hubs and then work with each hub to implement dynamic food procurement in that region. So earlier this year, Jane, Simon and I began working on an application to DP UK and the Dixon Foundation for some Level 1 funding. This funding is planned to be used to determine the local food landscape, initially in Argyll and Bute, but hopefully eventually we'd be able to scale that up across Scotland using accurate GIS mapping. This would then form the basis of regional food networks and also feed into wider food partnership work, which we've been developing with the support of Sustainable Food Places network. I'm really pleased to say we were successful in obtaining that Level 1 funding, and that initial funding will be used for the mapping exercise for Argyll and Bute, which I think the last time I spoke to Jane, she was trying to recruit cover for. But hopefully moving forward, we will be able to look at kind of scaling up and look at the feasibility of implementing dynamic food procurement in Scotland. And that's me for now. I will hand back over to Simon and hopefully catch up with some of you in the breakout rooms.
Brilliant. Thanks, Laura. And for me, I think it's really encouraging to see Scotland Excel sort of moving in this direction and also looking at how to incorporate more local suppliers into the frameworks. The project that we're working with, as Laura described, is something that I think is really important to start looking at how we do this in Scotland, because we need to actually map out what's there, what's available, and who's to buy. You know, whether that be at a public procurement level or to a private sector level. So I'm quite excited about seeing that where that project goes. And before we move over to the next speaker, I know James from Scotland Excel is having trouble getting in, and he's one of our facilitators. And I just wanted to check, James, quickly, are you comfortable with your connection in order to be a facilitator, or do you want us to find another route through? Okay, so I'm going to take the silence as that James is still having problems with his team. So if we can just remove James from the breakouts, that'd be fantastic. Brilliant. Thank you very much. So just to remind people, do make use of the chat. We're not going to have a question and answer section today because it's so tight and we've got so many people in here. Please put questions in the chat. If they're for a particular person, then please mark that it's for example, Laura. And then Laura, if you could, and other people who are presenting, if you could check the chat and answer those questions directly in there, that'd be fantastic. So now we've talked about the framework, and we talked about Scotland Excel. And now I want to look at this from the supplier's perspective. So I'd like to introduce John Davison from Scotland Food and Drink to talk us through their thinking about their refresh of Ambition 2030 and what that means for local food. So I'll hand over to you, John.
Thank you, Simon. And I will just share my screen, and I can see you only. Simon, tell me if you can see that screen.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. And thank you for inviting me today, and I promise Simon has told me to keep this to 10 minutes, so I will do my very best to run through some slides in the 10 minutes that we have available, because I know we're trying to pack a lot in. So this will be there for a very quick canter through the big issues of how we see it, and very happy to pick up separately with people thereafter. So I'm John Davidson. I am the Interim Chief Executive here at Scotland Food and Drink. For those who don't know us, we wear two hats. We are a membership organisation. We are an industry body, membership organisation with 430 members, representing food and drink manufacturers and others across the supply chain. And we look after their interests. The second aspect is we have quite a unique leadership role in Scotland. So we work with many other trade bodies and the public sector to grow the value and reputation of Scotland's food and drink industry. And we are at the heart of that in terms of the coordination of that. What I'm going to give you today is a supplier perspective, and Laura has talked about suppliers, and I think I'll start by just recognising the fantastic progress that's been over the last 10 years in terms of getting more local sourcing throughout our public sector contracts. I think we've made some brilliant progress, and I think the challenge we have now is how do we just build on that and how do we go further. So what I'm going to do here is just give you a flavour of where the food and drink industry is just now, because it's really important in terms of that context setting piece. I'm going to then explain where our aspiration is for the future over the next 10 years. And then thirdly, what the opportunities might be for us to work together going forward to try and keep boosting the local offer on our menus and plates, as Simon said. So very quickly, you've heard Simon talk about Ambition 2030. And what is that? That is the National Food and Drink Strategy that was published 5.5 years ago now, led by industry, jointly signed by industry and the public sector. And the purpose of that was to grow the value and reputation of our industry with quite a bold ambition, actually, to double its value, double our value to £30 billion by the year 2030. Now, within that, there was lots of things underpinning that, the things we would do, the areas we would need to make progress and support the industry, the markets we would target, etc. So that's what that was. And of course, that was on the back of a very successful 10-year spell for the food and drink industry, where it has really grown. Businesses have really grown. They've had much success in their markets, both domestically and internationally, and have really grown a reputation during that time. So it's been going really well. But clearly at that point, we never foresaw the challenges that we've all encountered over the past 2 or 3 years. And I think the food and drink industry, probably more than any other industry, has been affected by the combination of Brexit, COVID, and now the rising inflationary pressures that we all face. So it is a real challenge. It's a challenge for us all as consumers, of course, but from an industry perspective, all of those things have been major stumbling blocks for the industry due to significant disruption in our markets being essentially closed down for long periods of time, having to adapt in the workplace to the new rules and regulations, and now facing some of the highest increase in costs, production costs, that I think the industry has ever seen, probably for 30 years. So it's really tough just now for the industry, really tough. Fantastic products are still being made, really resilient businesses, but I think that operating environment is really tough just now and where we are as we try and emerge from COVID with these current challenges. So that is important for what I'm just about to say going forward. There's a really important political context here that's going on, which also feeds into what we're all talking about here today. So the Scottish Government has set a very ambitious new national strategy for economic transformation, which is on the left-hand side there, which sets out the direction of travel for the country for the next 15, 20 years. And I think we are very much aligned to the aspirations that's in that strategy. There is no doubt that one of the big focuses for the food and drink industry going forward is the need for us to be more sustainable. That environmental focus, that focus on net zero, it's always been a focus for us. 5.5 years ago, it was in the strategy, but I think now we need to redouble our efforts on what that is and what that means for business and how we adapt to those market demands for us to be greener for our environment. So that's a big challenge for us, and that is going to be a big focus. Of course, that is set against a context of really difficult financial settlement for the public sector. So that slide in the middle, that chart, which some of you may not be able to make out because it's very small, is the Scottish Government spending review over the next 5 years and what's projected to be for budgets. And you will see in general it's really tough. So in cash terms, it looks pretty level for a lot of the departments, but in real terms, that's reductions. So there's significant pressure on public sector resource, and I think that is a helpful context point for the conversations we're having today about how we stimulate more local sourcing and the implications of that budget piece for that. And finally, just a last bit of context piece, you know, in the face of all those market challenges, we have other unknowns at the moment. We've got a very ambitious regulatory agenda coming from governments. We have the prospect of a second independence referendum. So all of that creates quite a bit of uncertainty in terms of the industry. So what does that mean for us? That means we need to focus on the things that we can control as an industry from a supplier's perspective. And we're going to do that through refreshing our national strategy. So we will respond accordingly and plan as best as we can for the things out with our control. But the things that we can control, we will focus on. We often ask ourselves, why do we need a national strategy for food and drink? Why is it important? And I think it's a good thing for us to remember that. It really helps gel the industry together and gives us that vision and that commitment to inspire our business. So if we are clear about what those opportunities are and the range of people out there who have that shared desire and shared focus like we're talking about today, I think that really motivates business. It gives us an opportunity to think about those big challenges, but also the big opportunities for growth and how we really, with a laser focus, put our efforts into those things. So again, today is really important for that in terms of giving that focus for what we're trying to do in that local food offer. And I think thirdly, just influencing that public sector support. So whether that's financial support or whether that's policy decisions that are being made, having a coherent strategy that sets out where we want to get to and the benefits of that is really important, particularly important over the next 5-10 years as we enter this volatile period. So what is the strategy and where's it going? So this is an industry strategy. It's not a policy document. It's an industry strategy. And at the heart, we will always be market-led. We have been and we will be market-led. We need to be guided by what the market is telling us. And therefore, how do we prepare businesses to target those market opportunities? And there's different markets. We look at local markets, we look at the UK market, and we look at international markets. I think the focus in Scotland and the local market, we need to keep focusing on and we need to redouble our efforts there. There's huge opportunities, we believe, for many emerging and fledgling food and drink businesses to get a foothold in that public sector market. As I said before, There has been great examples of progress in this area. We want to build on that, and I want to put a few challenges at the end on how we do that. So we want to put a greater focus on that domestic market, and we want to do that for, yes, it's good for business, it's good for local economies, but I think for part of our culture and where we're going here, it's really, really important. So that is going to be our focus. What's important though, in terms of our role, is how we build the business capability to help you. So if you're looking for quality suppliers with the right accreditation, who have the capacity to give you what you need and the consistency, how do we build the expertise of businesses to do that for you? And that is our big focus going forward. We're doing that just now, and we'll do more of that. What I'm putting on the screen there is just some of the emerging thoughts of our strategy and what needs to be done, the areas we need to focus. And I'm not going to go into detail in the time we have here, but we believe, speaking to business and speaking to industry, that these are big cross-cutting issues that we need to refocus on and do well if we want to ensure businesses are ready to exploit those market opportunities that are out there, to give you the best quality of business, best quality product that's available for your contracts. So, I'm not going to go into them, as I say. These things, though, if we do them well, if we get the conditions right, if we support our businesses, will really help unlock those opportunities we believe in the market. And I think the public sector market is really important for suppliers for a whole number of reasons.
It's a 1 minute warning, John.
So, my final slide. There's great work going on at the moment. Great work. And the Soil Association, who are involved today, have done fantastic work through Food for Life. I know there's fantastic work. Laura explained what Scotland Excel are doing. There's stuff in the NHS that's happening and elsewhere. We have the Good Food Nation that's been mentioned already in terms of the levers that might pull to help us stimulate more local sourcing and think about that local offer. I guess my final comment on that is we need to build on that, and can we be even bolder? Can we push the boundaries further? My sense is we have done a fantastic job, but a lot of the low-hanging fruit has been achieved. And how do we now build on that and target those more difficult areas that we've historically perhaps not sourced from Scotland? So how can we do that? How can we plan our menus around seasonality, around that local offer? How can we think beyond the public food offer to things like events in the local area that we all have levers on? So I think there's big opportunities. Scotland Food and Drink's here to help. We have links across the whole industry. So please work with us. We will work with you. We want to help you. We want to work together in partnership to really, really cement local sourcing at the heart of public food procurement. And at that, I will stop there, Simon.
Thank you, John. Brilliant. Really great. So we've heard from Scotland Excel. We've heard from Scotland Food and Drink. We've heard from what the suppliers and what our framework providers are talking about. But what does it mean for you at a local authority level? We're going to have our first discussion. We're going to split into breakout rooms. I'm going to reduce this down to 15 minutes, everybody. So facilitators, just be aware, just because of the time we've got at the minute, people getting a bit late coming in. There's going to be 2 questions. And what we're trying to find out here is who's got buy-in at their local authority level in terms of sourcing locally and sustainably. Is that a chief exec level, or are you finding yourself, you're in a catering team, you want to do this, but all the doors going forward are fairly firmly pushed closed? But then we want to sort of really think about what are the opportunities, what are the levers, what are the drivers that are able to sort of push this forward, but also, if there are obstacles, great, but if we can just not go down on a negative spiral, we haven't got any money, so we can't do this. We know that's an issue. We're looking really for the, for the things that can help us to sort of collaborate and look for good practice that we can share amongst ourselves. So by the magical power of Bruno, we're going to be going into breakout rooms where this will be facilitated for about 15 minutes, and then we'll see you back in this room. Okay, thanks very much. So I hope you had some interesting conversations around where you are with local food, and also around some of the drivers and levers that you might find that we can use towards getting more local and sustainable food onto our food procurement at local authority level. So I'd like to pass over now to our case studies. So we've got 3 local authorities that we want to just to give you a little bit of focus on. Now, it's not as if we picked these particular local authorities because there's no other great stuff going on around Scotland. There's an amazing amount of stuff going on. There's farmers being put directly in contact with local authorities over in Fife. We have hyper-local work going on in Dumfries and Galloway. But we just wanted to pick 3 examples that were slightly different, doing different things. So where we're going to hear from Mark Hunter in East Ayrshire, Neil Beattie from the Shetland Isles, and Helen Gouichon and Sandra Reid from South Lanarkshire. Now, we've got quite tight amount of time, so I'm going to pass over to Mark first from East Ayrshire. And I'm just going to say, if you're able just to kind of really hold it tight to time, that would be fantastic, Mark. OK, so if you're ready, please do share your screen. Thank you.
Is that it shared? Yeah, is it up?
It isn't, Mark. No, we've just got a blank screen for you currently. There we go. Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Mark.
So, yeah, I mean, I'll run through this fairly quickly, Simon. Thanks very much. Yeah, I'm Mark Hunter, the Service Strategic Lead, for Food and Facility Support for East Ayrshire Council, and this is really just about our journey and where we've came from, because we have been doing it for quite a while. I can't move my slides, Simon. They're not moving.
Try in the bottom right hand corner or the bottom left hand corner. You should see little arrows to move them along.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. Yeah, so just a little bit overview about what East Ayrshire is. So we've been using local suppliers and local produce since 2004. In 2008, we were approached by the Food for Life Soil Association and looked at what we were doing, and we went in at the gold level. And since then, in 2008, we've been at gold, the longest serving in the UK. We're a mixture of rural and urban areas, and we've around about 16,000 pupils attending East Ayrshire schools. We have 3,000 early year places, 40 primary schools, 7 secondary schools, and we support 17 community larders, and we also are quite heavily involved in hospitality and community events within the local area. So the drivers for change on us at the very beginning, it was about health, and for those who know, Robin Gurley was very at the forefront of what we did in East Ayrshire in 2004 about looking at local produce, about the social, the educational and environment, supporting local suppliers and producers, engaging with the community and economic development. Food education programmes was very important to us in schools and within the community, and we've built that up over the last 5 or 6 years. Fresh local produce, we are very important about, and the freshly cooked food in schools, which comes part of the Soil Association, and it's over 75% for us is cooked fresh each day. Building that sustainable model, we're always adapting it and looking at it over the years. We've done 3 different levels of framework agreements, and each time we've done that, it has been slightly different in what we've done. But what we've found is we've had more SMEs applying through that procurement process, reducing our food waste and utilising surplus food, how we reuse surplus food within our school meals, and also that dignified approach to the community larders and what we're doing there. And then their supplier engagement locally and nationally is very important, about engaging with our local suppliers to see what they're looking for and to see how things we can look at and change through the next process of procurement. And then upskilling staff and training, and that works both ways. It works for our suppliers, but it also works for us. The skills that our catering managers still have in cooking, and obviously the training that some of our suppliers have given to local people in terms of driving, in terms of skills, and it's something that we support and look at when we have the contract administration meetings with our suppliers. So start off with a pilot. So when we started off with a pilot, very small, few suppliers, few schools, and that sort of allowed us to build up the process. We tailor-made our menus at the very beginning. Our menu started, we have a 3-week menu cycle, and it started in week 1 in different areas to allow the suppliers to get around the logistics of East Ayrshire. That's not now the case. Our suppliers have built up the infrastructure to be able to deliver on week 1 in all our local authority. So it's took a while to get there, but it's managed, and by having those conversations, we were able to do it. Ensure staff and stakeholders understand and support. So it is about engaging with the community, it's engaging with education, engaging with our partners. promote East Ayrshire's food culture and community plan. It all ties into what we want to do, and develop the food education and public information sessions that we do within our schools and tasting sessions for things like that there. There's producer side, tender in the suitable geographical and produce lots. So we did produce lots within a framework, and it was a pan-Ayrshire framework. So our other colleagues in North and South could come into that framework should they wish and use those local suppliers. The contracts offer suppliers secure payment and a predictable demand. So they know, they speak to us, they can arrange. Like for instance, one of the biggest ones was for our egg producer, that she wasn't producing eggs during the summer period, so she would time when she got delivered her new chickens in time for us starting in August again, so our eggs were ready when we opened up in August, those kind of things, when the demand was likely to drop over that period. Employment opportunities locally, recognise SMEs and how to encourage SMEs to invest in their own infrastructure, but also to look at sustainability in that. Value what the public offer, but public food offers access to good food and nutrition for all, social, environment and educational. Support opportunities for learning about food. Again, that's food education is very important, especially in this crisis that we're in, the cost of living, that people understand how to cook and what to do with food. And the reputation and public confidence in the local authority service that we're providing fresh, quality cooked meals in our schools, which is mainly local food and produced fresh every day. The benefits for just food mills, making use of supplier community benefits. They come in, they'll do talks. They support us during the pandemic. They were able to switch very quickly during that pandemic. And then we were investing in local businesses, and the circular economy is very important. The SMEs investing in their own staff is very important to us, and that is something that has grown over the years that we've been doing it. And the value, the food that we put on the plate as an investment. And a few people, I'll show you a comment or a phrase later on by the UN rapporteur of what it is an investment of what we do locally and spend. This year, when we moved to Muscale milk, a comment there you can read. I was telling my grandson he'll be getting the same milk as his gran has. He was jumping up and down with excitement. So the young people see, they see the deliveries of these local vans. Potentially they could go into that, work with that industry, right? And they know where that product's coming from because they come in and talk to us in our schools. This here, finally, just I know that's a very quick overview, but finally, just particularly in times in economic term, costs are often seen as a major obstacle to making public food procurement schemes more consistent in the right food strategies. What it says here is really it's about an investment in what you want to do locally, and we do see that as an investment. It is a long journey, and we have started and we have adapted over the years to be able to deliver what we do within our budgets. We do additional stuff, whether it's hospitality events to try and incorporate that additional income, but we've managed to do it, and I think we've managed to do it because we've grown with it for so long over the last 15 years. And that's me. Thank you very much, Simon. That's as quick as I could possibly get it through.
Mark, that's amazing. You've definitely got the gold star for being the swiftest and most concise. That's brilliant. And thank you. I've seen you talk a number of times, Mark, and it's always never ceases to be amazed with some of the things that seem so obvious, but that you're doing, that just like, wow, that whole idea around training and skilling your staff in order, especially we're talking about, changing menus and seasonal produce, but also about the communications between the supplier and you as a procurer with the eggs, for example, and that final mantra around, it's not, we shouldn't see this as a cost, we should see it as an investment. This is an investment in, if we're looking at school food, this is an investment in our children, this is an investment in our futures. I think that's super, super great. Just one point, I know, Adrienne, sorry to have taken your hand down there, but if you've got a question, it'd be really great if you could put that in the chat and Mark will be able to address that there, just because we've got over 100 people on the call, so it'd be difficult to take the questions.
So can somebody maybe pass the question separately, because I don't have the chat function on this Teams at the moment?
Brilliant, no problem. So if any questions come in for Mark, what we'll do is we'll keep track of it, and then we can send those over to you afterwards, Mark, okay, and you can get back to them directly. If you're also able to put your email address in there, that would be fantastic.
Very quickly, Simon, can we share the slides later?
Yes, as far as I'm concerned, that's absolutely fine. I think everybody will be okay.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Okay, I'm going to swiftly pass it over to Neil. Neil from the Shetland Isles Council to give us a bit of a flavour about what local food means to them as an island community. So, Neil, if you're able to share your screen, that'd be fab. Thank you. Wonderful, we can see that. Off you go. Brilliant. Although you were on mute, Neil.
There we go. I thought I had it all figured out and didn't turn off mute.
Okay. Plans.
This is Kevin from JK Mainland's farm in the south of Shetland. Kevin approached one of our cooks about 2.5 years ago to see how he could go about supplying schools with the vegetables he grows in his family farm. Since that initial conversation, Kevin now supplies carrots, tatties, neeps, sprouts, cabbage, beetroot, broccoli and cauliflowers to 5 of our schools, and has even been growing some different coloured Romanescos to try and get the kids to eat them. We still buy the bulk of our fruit and veg from local wholesalers who are sourcing it from the Scottish mainland and obviously further afield. But we're thrilled that we've been able to help grow Kevin's local business, and we're delighted that he's been able to take on extra staff to help with the extra work we've given him. The public sector in Scotland spends over £150 million on food, and in Shetland we spend over 650,000 and serve over 2,500 meals every day. So obviously council food is a hugely powerful mechanism with the potential to dramatically influence local supply chains and communities through the buying power. In Shetland, we can struggle to get all the produce available on the Scottish mainland, and the products we do get are always more expensive. All food that is imported to Shetland must make the overnight 223-mile journey from Aberdeen to Lerwick, and on days when the seas are too rough, the boat doesn't sail. At the same time, we are lucky that many of our supplies can be procured without the need for a formal tender agreement, as the total value of the contract is often below the thresholds where this would be necessary. I thought the best way to show the kind of things we're doing is to go through the foods we're currently procuring from within Shetland and how we got to where we are, as well as an example of one that we've not been able to make work so far. The first example would be milk, which we get from Shetland Farm Dairies. Shetland Farm Dairies were initially on the Scotland Excel framework, but they've had some management restructure and sadly missed the latest tender and deadline with Scotland Excel. We still use them in line with our previous tender agreement, as they're the only realistic choice for us. Firstly, they're the only bid who were prepared to deliver to every school in Shetland. I think both Graham's and Muller said they would deliver to Shetland, but only to a central point where we would then need to arrange movement. Secondly, and most importantly, supporting the dairy here on Shetland helps us build resilience, plus the elected members and the general public in Shetland wouldn't be happy for us to be bringing in a product that has already been produced here. The next one is Shetland lamb. This is a product that's, again, it's very important. We've got 10 times more sheep across the islands than we do people. And we do have a butcher meat contract with 2 Shetland suppliers. Within that contract, there was no, when it was made, there was no specific mention of Shetland lamb, but we did approach both the local wholesalers to see if they could source it and then put it on to theirs, so they would still be our suppliers and we'd still be working within the tender regulations. They were both able to find local suppliers, so we now serve Shetland lamb once every 4 weeks on our menus, even though getting the bairns to actually eat the lamb is not always so straightforward. The next one is fish, and that's the really big one for us. So the Shetland fishing industry is worth between 250 and 350 million pounds per year to the UK economy, and it's the largest industry in the islands. As with butcher meat, we have a formal contract tender process, which was carried out in 2019, and our spend last year was over £130,000. We followed the normal rules for with a local tender for that, and one supplier was awarded a contract. So all the fish we buy is delivered fresh to all the schools and care homes. And when that contract was awarded, there was another bidder, but as it was a relatively new business, when the contract was awarded, there were a few concerns about their ability to supply, although we're confident that they'll bid when the contract is re-advertised. And right now we're buying fresh salmon, haddock, cod, tusk and ling, as well as locally smoked mackerel. which is going at the schools and care homes. The next one for us is bread. And up until relatively recently, most of our schools were buying bread from local wholesalers that was being shipped up from south. Most of the schools were using local bakeries for rolls, but as the threat of Brexit shortages approached, we decided it was sensible to improve our food resilience wherever we could. A relatively low annual spend allowed us to approach all the bakers across Shetland to explain exactly what our needs were, without the need for a formal tender exercise to take place. The bakeries came back to us as to which schools they could supply, along with costs and the nutritional breakdown of their products. We then contacted the schools individually to let them know which bakers would be able to supply them. We're now using 5 different bakeries in our kitchens, and our additional spend and guaranteed business has led to 2 of the bakeries employing extra staff. The bakeries have also been able to adjust some of their products to better suit our needs, which has been an unexpected bonus. The pandemic showed us our decision had been the right one, as when there were other foodstuffs not reaching Shetland, there was no concerns of any bread supply. The newest item we've got on locally has been eggs, and it had been a bit of an effort to get eggs over the line. One of the reasons for that was because we're with the Food for Life programme. They specify that it needs to be lion marked, lion stamped, and because of the size of the egg producers, they would not have the lion mark. Food for Life were happy to allow us to use these eggs as long as the local environmental health department had approved them and they had the unique identifier stamp and best before date. So we now use 2 suppliers across Shetland who supply 8 different schools, and we are trying to find a way to get local eggs into all the schools, but there's issues around excess eggs when the schools are closed, as well as deliveries to more remote schools. The strawberries, which are up here, these are grown actually by one of our cooks. She's got 24 polytunnels growing strawberries, and most of her free time and summer holidays are spent working with them. We do get some in the school at the start of the school year, but they're highly sought after in Shetland, so it's a bit of a fight to get them. One where we didn't get it over across the line, what's happened, was Shetland beef. We tried very hard to engage with local beef producers in a similar way that we managed to get lamb on, but the biggest issue was the continuity of supply. The producers we spoke with felt they could supply us with the meat, but as we were looking for the cheapest cuts, there was a fear that the market for the more expensive cuts would not be there. Our wholesalers are also cautious on the beef, as the price of Shetland beef is significantly more expensive than the beef they can get from Scotland. We do plan to revisit this in future to see if we can make it work though. So a list of benefits for us really is the first step was for us being prepared to change our model. This means allowing schools to use small suppliers that are maybe slightly more expensive, but knowing that more of the money is staying in Shetland. Accepting that there is a bit more work for us in terms of getting suppliers set up and getting different messages out to different schools. Using local produce is an investment in the community. So every time we buy produce from someone other than a local producer, our money leaves the Shetland economy. By shortening supply chains, we keep money in Shetland, which helps sustain local producers and create local jobs. By investing the council money, By investing public money, the council also has a responsibility to ensure the food is procured in a way that reflects the council and the island's values. So by encouraging local suppliers to engage with the council, we're providing a valuable route to market. Reliable long-term contracts also help them grow resilience and plan their business, as the council's obviously a reliable paying customer. Using local suppliers helps reduce our fragility at the end of the supply chain. COVID showed us that long and complex supply chains are fragile. By supporting local growers and producers, we can build resilience and encourage local skills like farming, butchery and bakery. There is a Food for Life study that shows for every £1 invested in local food, it yields a social return on investment of over £4. We're also working on a Shetland Islands Council catering procurement policy to ensure that even if the funding is cut further, future councils will still be committed to the policy of buying local wherever possible. And by supporting our local farmers, growers and producers, we can help to ensure that they will be here in the future. And this is vital for our long-term food security, especially with an uncertain energy future and our current reliance on fossil fuels to produce, package, transport and store food. And that is me.
Brilliant, Neil. Thank you very much. And then I was busy scribbling notes down here, and you basically said everything I was going to say in your last slide, which is basically, you know, the benefits for shortening your supply chains and from being able to source locally. And of course, you've got a very specific example there, being on Shetland, an island so far away. And I know from working with yourselves and other islands, and seeing what happened during COVID, that kind of ability to be flexible and to be reactive is super important when you're so far away from your normal suppliers. So thank you very much. Over to our final case study, which is going to be from South Lanarkshire. We've got Hélène Goodlichon and Sandra Reid, who are going to give us a bit of a flavour about their mapping activities there. And Hélène, I can see your face. So Mark, if you could stop sharing, that would be great, please. And then Hélène, if you could do that, and if we can keep that quite tight, Hélène, that would be fab.
Okay, thanks, Simon. I'll do that. Let me share my screen.
Wonderful, that's great.
Should be in presenter mode now.
It's not in presenter mode yet. There you go. Perfect.
Very good. Okay. So yeah, good morning, everyone. I'm Hélène Goodlichon, Policy Officer for Food Development at South Lanarkshire Council. And this specific initiative led by the Council together with Sandra Reid, with a project consultant at Fair Consulting. So just before we present this initiative, so I'd like to give you a bit of context in relation to food procurement in South Lanarkshire Council. So the Council has developed a good food strategy, which was approved in 2019, and ensuring that the Council prepares, serves, promotes enjoyable, healthy and sustainable food, including local food in the Council properties and schools, is part of the key objectives of this strategy. So the strategy is implemented within an annual action plan, and this includes action to progress this objective and report twice a year to elected members at the Council Climate Change and Sustainability Committee. The Council also developed its community wealth building strategy in 2021, and utilizing public sector procurement to support local supply chain is also part of the objective of this strategy. And the strategy is also implemented within an annual action plan, which includes actions and measures related to food procurement. And then, so last year, a sustainable food procurement working group was established to progress its objectives, and it involves office from procurement, economic development, and the main council buyers. So this includes facility services, social work, and South Lanarkshire leisure and culture. A decision was taken to commission what we've called a market capacity assessment, and this decision was taken to assess the capacity of the local food and drink businesses to supply food to the council. And this analysis was funded through the council food strategy support fund, which has been allocated to implement some of the activities of the food strategy. So what are the objectives of this analysis that we've commissioned? So first of all, is to analyze the food demand from schools, schools, but also South Lanarkshire leisure and culture. So this includes cafes in country parks and museums, and the demand for social work. A second objective is to understand the offer of food and drink in South and North Lanarkshire, and therefore to look at current and future opportunities to source food from local food and drink businesses. So the objective is also to analyze and to identify the barriers in sourcing or supplying local food. So hearing from both the perspective of the council and businesses. And finally, the objective of this analysis is to provide a recommendation for the council to consider, and also recommendation for external partners that would help to overcome these barriers and should ultimately help to source local food and work with local businesses. So I'll now give the floor to Sandra, who carried out this analysis, and she will present you the methodology and share with you some of the key learning from this analysis.
Thank you, Hélène. And morning, everybody. So looking at our methodology for carrying out this piece of work, it was important to look at two areas, at the demand side and the supply side. So on the demand side, I first started to look at what is the council buying at the moment, where from, what suppliers, what the volumes and quality requirements were for each department. I think, you know, it's not be no surprise to mention that the vast majority of buying is through the facilities department for school meals. So this information was readily available via the procurement teams at South Lanarkshire Council and with the help of Scotland Excel also. All of South Lanarkshire Council's buying, food and drink buying at the moment is through the Excel frameworks. So I then took part in some very helpful discussions with Scotland Excel suppliers, who were excellent sources of information on local supply chain. And you know, I think it's important to remember that that the suppliers, specifically Muller, Brakes, and Campbell's Prime Meats, are buying within South Lanarkshire. So it was great to be able to identify that. Then looked at breaking down what is Scottish, what is local, and what is coming from other sources. And again, this information came very helpfully from Scotland Excel. And then moving on to the supply side and making contact with local businesses. I think it's important to mention that this was quite a challenging piece of the work. We have to remember that many of the local businesses are small. They're not necessarily well resourced. And they don't always have time to speak to you. There was no definitive list of suppliers, so there was a fair bit of legwork there. And I did have some great support from the Environmental Health Department, who were able to share who the registered food and drink businesses were. So next step was a survey, SurveyMonkey, which was issued through social media and through networks, so Business Gateway, regional food groups, Scotland Food and Drink. Moving on then to some face-to-face and online meetings with suppliers, and I held a series of drop-in sessions also. At the moment, and this is an ongoing process, I'm undertaking sort of one-to-one meetings to assess in some more granular detail whether businesses are interested in taking part in this kind of procurement, what the scale of their business is, and what support requirements they might need to be able to supply into the local authority. Another really important part of my research was speaking with other local authorities and understanding how other public bodies are engaging with a local supply chain. So that was a combination of desk research and online meetings. And I want to thank particularly Jane Jones and Mark Hunter for sharing their experiences on that. Ellen, can I have the next slide, please? So what have we learned so far? I think it's important to mention that my work is at a very early stage, and there has been no report as yet made to the clients. So looking indicatively at what some of the barriers for suppliers might be. That could be accessing contract opportunities. As I've mentioned, there's often a lack of capacity in smaller local businesses to complete public sector tenders, and they might need some support in doing that. The scale of the contracts is not always relative to the size of businesses and the resource that they have available. And there can often be gaps in the accreditation requirements. While all food and drink businesses require to have a food safety management system, sometimes that's all they have, and they don't have BRC accreditation or SALSA accreditation, which some wholesalers or local authorities require. However, a number of benefits, as we've heard talked about earlier today: employment opportunities, more sales, busier business, more jobs. Turnover growth is obviously a benefit, and the wider community benefits of having the spend staying in the local area. and benefiting local economic growth. Sustainability is a massive benefit of local purchasing and associated reduction in food miles. And just lastly, looking at some of the perceived barriers, and it's important to stress that that is a perception from the South Lanarkshire Council perspective. Making changes to current arrangements is not necessarily going to be easy. There would be resource requirements within the procurement teams and within other buyer departments. As mentioned earlier, there's support required around compliance for food safety and accreditation. Local authority buyers require a guaranteed supply chain, and we would need to have confidence in local and potentially smaller suppliers to be able to fulfil that supply chain. Obviously the potential higher product cost is also a perceived barrier. So my work is ongoing to make recommendations, which I'm not able to share today, but in terms of our next steps, I'll be sharing results with key council departments that I've already been dealing with, and discussing recommendations and next steps as part of the Food Action Plan and the Community Wealth Building Strategy that Ellen has already referred to. We also want to share the results with the wider network and our other local public partners, NHS Lanarkshire, South Lanarkshire College, as well as the private sector and other key partners. So at the beginning of the journey here with the mapping, but we hope to be able to share results soon. And once the council has seen all of this, we'd be very happy to share with yourselves also. And that's me. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Ellen. Thanks very much, Sandra. Really interesting stuff, and very similar in certain ways to the work that we're doing with Scotland Excel and Argyll and Bute Council in terms of mapping what's there, and also that's already happening in Fife as well. I think there's a recognition that there are data gaps, and we need to know what's out there if we're going to be working on progressive procurement systems. And I think this will be something that we'll need to be looking at even sort of in more detail when we're looking at rolling out the Good Food Nation Act and the national and local food plans, is that we will need to find out what data is out there and what data needs to be collected in order to be able to measure our progress against this. Okay, we're coming up to the very end of our meeting, but before we finish, I just wanted to have one final bit of discussion from you, and we're going to put you into a very short breakout room, because we've heard quite a lot of stuff that's been happening out from local authorities. These are just some case studies, and some at the start of the journey and some are further along, and there are lots of challenges, but lots and lots of opportunities. But we want to know what's the best way that we can learn from each other, we can avoid duplication, and we can identify opportunities for collaboration. So I want to invite you just to go into one final sort of maybe 6-minute breakout room, Bruno. If we could do that, I just want to find out, would a regular forum looking at bringing local authorities together, maybe not everybody all of the time, but those that are working on these kind of procurement issues, would a regular forum be useful in order to share good practice? If so, what would that look like? Who would be involved? And how often would that be? If not, what other things might be useful for trying to share some of this learning and make sure that we're not sort of going off in different directions, okay, and falling at the same hurdles. So I'm going to put you into a very quick breakout room, and we'll come back and then we'll close. Okay, so over to you, Bruno. Thanks. Okay, we're at 12 o'clock. Thanks, everybody. I hope you found today both useful and interesting. We're not going to have any feedback on that last session. We'll obviously look and speak to facilitators afterwards to see what people thought about what we might do going forward in terms of having some forum or something where local authorities can come together. But I want to say thanks very much for taking the time to join us this morning, and I wish you a very good rest of the day. And facilitators, if you're able just to stay for 5 minutes, that would be fantastic. Okay, just for a bit of a debrief. So thank you very much, everybody. Have a lovely afternoon.